Hi, I'm Matt from hockeyreviews.ca, and this is the true 12.2 blocker kind of snapshot review, but kind of review. I was able to use this with the puck machine because this is a demo set. So this video, all the videos with the catching glove, as well as with the pads, are all because of Just Hockey. This was their demo set. They were gracious enough to let me borrow it, do a bunch of videos on it, and then bring it back and specifically do reviews on this gear. So I'm greatly appreciative of that. If this video is helpful, or if you want to show your appreciation, please check them out in the description to their website and Instagram. Follow them on Instagram. Let them know you're from Hockey Reviews and these videos were appreciative and helpful. Now, with that said, they are a Canadian source. So if you're in the US, you might get a good deal with currency exchange rate there. So check that out. Now, with that said, I have ordered custom gear from them before, specifically this Bauer blocker, and the process was absolutely excellent. The customer service was excellent, and the experience was just really good all around. So I definitely recommend checking them out if you're ordering any custom goalie equipment or player equipment or gear at all. They've been wonderful in my experience, and that's not just because of me. I've purchased from them as a normal customer before. Everything was really great. Now, if you also want to support the channel, check out the links in the description to Buy Me a Coffee and Patreon. Everything through there will come right back in the channel so I keep making reviews and making content. Now, obviously, this is built in Canada by Lefevre, as you can see right there. And this is the new line, first line out really since True took over. We'll get this right out of the way. Their wait times are enormous right now and ridiculous. Hopefully those are growing pains, and hopefully those are things that will change in the future so you can get these in like an actual reasonable time. But regardless of that, I always wanted to check out the, not necessarily made in Canada, but the pro line of gear. I'm not someone that says you have to be made in Canada to be amazing quality, or made in North America, I should say. But this stuff really just hits differently. Everything about this is so nice. I totally understand why NHL goalies and pro goalies have been using Lefevre gear for a long time. And this stuff just feels so different compared to like retail gear that I've seen in the past, that it's unreal. Specifically the comparisons to the CCM retail gear, because this stuff is just like on a different level, and it's super, super impressive. I'm going to talk about this at the beginning because I think it's worth calling out. The quality of this stuff is just unreal. I couldn't find a stitch out of place. The only part that's kind of even mediocre stitching is basically right here, and you never notice it when it's wearing, and it feels wonderful to the touch and everything like that. It's just phenomenal. But True does go out of their way and goes overboard on a bunch of pieces, which I am going to highlight right now, just to show how good of a job True does on this stuff. When I say True, you know I mean Lefevre, the actual factory of it, but I wanted to call that out. So you can see spots right here, and this is a continue thing over the pads and the catching glove and the blocker, how thick this piece of Gen Pro is. Because it's really, as you can see, two pieces of Gen Pro. I'm pulling one side up. That doesn't need to be two pieces of Gen Pro. That only needs to be one. But making it two makes it a little bit thicker, a little bit more durable, so it's not going to pull off at like extreme cases. I've had a ton of blockers in the past pull off here just from retail. Specific, like the Hyperlight block I looked at had that off. The Passau, which was supposedly made in Canada, great quality, that part was pulling off. Just this having that double thickness here is just an attention to detail that is very, very impressive. Now, I want to be very clear. CCM has done this on their retail stuff, and like the Axis piece here this is two pieces of thick Gen Pro right there. But the difference in materials and just how this is all made is what really sets it apart. For example, this piece right here is two layered of Gen Pro, and you can see it kind of coming apart at the edges right there. Now watch how stiff this whole piece is. You lift this and basically the whole piece comes up. This feels like a very stiff and kind of firm section right here. And it's just the quality differences on the material. When you look at the Lefevre Gen Pro right here, should be the exact same. It's that double thickness. Look how soft that is. Like, it's so much softer. And while you might, why does that matter? It's just the materials they're using is so much better on this gear. And while the pro stuff that CCM used to sell for their pros than the actual retail stuff, it's unbelievable. Even when you look at these differences right here, I really wish I had a thickness check, because the CCM is double layered and you can see it. But the True stuff, well, and Lefevre, I'm just going to say True from now on. The True stuff is thicker than the CCM. It's still double layered. It's just this material is so much nicer than what the stuff on CCM is. And it's not like there should be any differences between the materials. They're both weave. It's just the difference in quality is like outstanding. Another good example of this is this piece right here. It's really easy to kind of get in there and stretch this out. It feels like more of a natural leather versus this, where it's super tight to it, and you can see it doesn't really move at all. There's like zero flex to this. And that's not just because this is tied like looser, tighter. That's the material itself is more flexible and stretches more. And you can feel it like on here compared to when CCMs, it feels like it's more soft and it feels more like a leather. Now, obviously companies aren't doing leather gear anymore, but the quality of the synthetic leather on this is so much nicer than what is on like CCM. The other thing I noticed that was really awesome for quality and just an interesting thing overall is how they do their graphics. So you can see how the Gen Pro is actually folded over itself. The only place it isn't folded over is right here. So you can see how you can get on the inside edge there, but everywhere else, well, and right here. So basically this one section is the only spot that isn't folded over. Everywhere else is folded under itself and stitched. So it's a nice round piece and you don't see the edges. Really interesting in that they do that. I'm not sure why they do that, but it's something I noticed on this one. And again, to give CCM credit, they do the same thing for the most part. This part's exposed, but this part is sewn over, exposed, and sewn over. But it's just something really interesting I noticed on this one specifically, and I wanted to call out. It does definitely make the gear look a little bit better in my opinion, but it's just that little attention to detail, and they are going that little extra distance to make this gear like special in my opinion, and it really does feel that way all throughout. I really wish I had a thickness gauge here so you could see the difference, but that is a good example of how thick the Gen Pro on the True Stuff is, just right there, compared to the CCM, which is right there. You can see the CCM is noticeably thinner. So that's where that quality part is definitely coming from. The True Stuff is just on another level. This stuff definitely feels cheaper and not as nice on the CCM gear as it does on the True gear. Now, speaking of quality, something I've been harking on about for at least a year now is Suregrip quality. Once again, True is knocking out of the park. They bought the right company, let's put it that way. Now, this textured material on the palm is noticeable enough and textured enough to be truly different than what Nash is. It's not slippery, and it definitely feels like the Suregrip that I've known and I've come to enjoy, and it's all the way on to the finger as well. And you can really see the texturedness to it, where the little squares or parallelograms are really, really defined and noticeable. You can really see that they like dive in there, and it's a textured design, whereas the parts on CCM much less so. Now obviously this is used, so this part is a little bit misleading because it's used a bit more, but right here this part is never touched by the stick, and you can see how undefined it is. It's totally smooth to the touch. You can barely feel it all. It almost feels like the little indents are stamped in, compared to True's, which actually feels like it's a design and it's actually 3D. This almost feels like it's just printing, kind of like what Warrior does on their player gloves. Super cheap, not very nice. Feels very, very little difference compared to the actual Nash on the palm, where this one feels night and day difference between the two. Again, huge props to True. The company that's making this gear is really good. On top of that, this Nash material is super soft to the touch and definitely does feel a nicer, higher quality than what the CCM Axis stuff does and the CCM palms in general do. This just feels nicer. It just is nicer, because that's kind of the philosophy here, is they use solid quality products. And again, you can see with the thickness of the material of the Nash, it is considerably thicker than what is on the CCM gear, and it is much, much thinner. So if anyone tells you that CCM is making as quality gear as True, they're lying. They're straight up lying. It's not. I have no problems with some of the CCM gear I've used recently. It's just not as good as this. This stuff takes it to a whole new level and makes sense why so many people want it. I'm sorry to True to be talking about CCM so much in this, but I really want to differentiate them too. And this is a really good way to do it, just showing the quality of like little details and the better materials that they're using. I think that's the best way to really show differences, because you can't feel the differences, which you can absolutely feel when you wear these different gloves and the gear. But I'm trying to show them off in video form, because until you put it on, you just can't really tell it's that different. One thing that this blocker also has, and it's different compared to, for example, the Axis, as you can see right here, is the thickness of the board. So the Axis isn't super thin, but it is slimmed down compared to what this True one is. And I don't honestly think it really matters. I had blockers from all ranges of thick boards like this to thin boards like this. And honestly, it doesn't really matter. It does help push the like kind of face away a little bit. So technically, if you go down that Warrior marketing route of covering better angles, this would help with that. But the balance and everything is phenomenal. So I really don't think they need to slim that down or anything. I think it's totally fine. They do an excellent job on it, just like everything else on here. The one place I am going to call True out on is the stitching they have done on these palms is atrocious. You can see how bunched up they are right here and right here and right here. It should be totally flat and kind of sticking out like this. You can see this one was done much better on that, and this one just isn't. When you stick it out, it's a little bit better, but you see how there's this little notch right here? That is supposed to end up right in the middle of the glove, and you can see the top one right here definitely does line up, but this bottom one doesn't look like it quite lines up. It's a little bit off to the side. Not the best sewn design here. Does this matter? Does this ever come into play? No, not at all, but I'm going to call it out to be totally fair because it's something I noticed, and it's something that's honestly not phenomenal. Now, another thing I noticed when looking really closely, this glove has padded foam in it. So you can see how there's Suregrip, this black thing, and then the normal Nash backing. So this black stuff right here is foam. Now I can't separate it from the Suregrip because I'm pretty sure it's glued together, but it is a foam. It does have that squishing feel to it, and it goes all the way down the palm. So you can see it come all the way down here. You can see it go all the way there, and then you can see it also sewn right in there in this piece right here. Very interesting. That will dampen the vibrations coming from the stick, and it's just a nice little touch that, in my opinion, doesn't really hinder the feel of gloves. But if you want a thinner glove and a thinner palm, you can obviously order that. But it's a nice touch, and I'm a pretty big fan of it all the way through. Thumb here is just their normal thumb, and very similar, to be honest, what CCM has. This pillow and everything here is still really similar to the E-Flex design that I showed off recently, with the pillow of the foam on the inside that you can unvelcro and pull out. I'm not going to do that here. It's just a foam that you could replace. It's not very dense. It's a really soft pillow, but it's an interesting thing there, and same design that CCM does. Extra little thumb padding right here as well that will get squishing. So if puck hits here, it kind of adds that little bit of protection right here in your thumb. This has been a staple on Lefevre gloves forever, True gloves, well, Lefevre gloves forever, and CCM design. It is a different material on the Axis, but it is a similar material, I believe, on the E-Flex, but I don't have it to look at me. One place I want to criticize this design for, and I hate companies doing this, and everyone does it, the sticky side should be on this part. And maybe there's a reason everyone's doing this, but it's super frustrating because this part is going to get stuck to jerseys. It's going to get stuck to other gear. All you have to do is put the sticky side right here, because that will always be covered by something. No one is going to crank this as max it can to be loosened, because you can't get your hand in there, and that's crazy. It's just so tight, like, and it cuts off circulation. It's not nice. No one's going to tighten it that much. So this really does need to be like switched on here, and you can see right here, that's the like where it changes. So even then it doesn't match up all the way, and I like these pretty loose. I really wish that was switched the other way. That way this wouldn't get stuck on stuff, because even when I've been like demoing this has gotten stuck on some clothes and stuff like that. So it's kind of annoying, as well as jerseys, but I really wish they swapped that around. Now with this tightened the way it is, it actually does interfere with the glove movement. So you can see this is actually really open cuff, really great designed cuff, but that is kind of getting in the way there. So that is why I had it originally loosened off, because this is still snug and feels really good. And then it definitely opens up the back a little bit more. And this is one of the best gloves for this at all. The wrist mobility and movement on it is phenomenal. The balance is excellent. True does a phenomenal job on here and does a ton of credit. One of the things that adds to that is the padding that they use on the inside. So you can see a little bit bunched up right now from me using it, but it's a firm foam. And obviously you can see it squishing in, but that is firmer than what is on this one. This one's a lot softer and feels like there's a lot less cushioning foam in there. It feels like it's using more air, where this one definitely feels more cushioned and like better to the feel. Now, with that said, when I was doing the puck rebounds on this, I felt nothing, and it felt phenomenal on there. So huge props to True again there. A nice little detail that works really well. Back onto that cuff design, I think True knocked this out of the park when they departed from CCM last year or whenever it was. Velcro here, that really allows you to open this up and adjust it. If you want to be crazy and really loosen this up, you can. That's a massively open cuff. You're gonna get zero restrictions from that. The only restriction is this piece right here. Super open, amazing all the way. But again, that's where I wish this wasn't exposed Velcro, then this would be exposed Velcro. Or this is an extreme example of this cuff and how open this can get and how flexible it is. I wouldn't go this route, but it's good to have that option and it's a phenomenal design. Personally, I'm pretty happy just closing this off a little bit. And then even then you can keep that one open a little bit and it's still super flexible, but you can definitely hear the Velcro getting in the way there. At least I can, hopefully it comes off on video, but that's super flexible, super open, amazing, amazing design. For comparison, Bauer, this just doesn't work well. One, this single piece cuff that they added to the Hyperlight, the Supreme and stuff, doesn't allow you to really flex nearly as much. So I'm not nearly all the way down on there, and this part gets in the way too. So Lefevre definitely has, True definitely has a great design here and is really, really, really good with this. So huge props to them for that. Sidewall is pretty solid. It's not like Bauer solid where it doesn't move at all. It has a little bit of give, but when you're actually making saves and everything, it's going to do a pretty solid job of covering everything up. This blocker overall design is tried and tested. It's been used forever. There's not a ton of innovation here. Like there's no fancy materials like Bauer's Curve or any of those other composite materials, and there's no molded foams, but it does its job really well, and it's so well balanced, and it's like, it feels lightweight. It's not the lightest thing I've ever felt, but it feels wonderful on your hand. It's so balanced on your hand. I've been a Bauer guy forever and saying Bauer blockers are the best. Bauer blockers are the best. Heck, I bought this because this was one of my favorite blockers ever, especially for the lower hand position. And honestly, if I have a choice between these two, I'm probably going with this one. That's saying a ton for me. I'm a huge Bauer guy for blockers. I love the kick. I love the rebounds, but the feel of this is just unreal. I totally understand why Ryan Miller has been wearing this thing forever and would always wear this type of blocker and kept wearing it over and over again. It makes sense. The quality on it is phenomenal. The balance on it's phenomenal. Unfortunately, I can't talk about how big the rebounds are on this because my little testing thing on it doesn't really help. It doesn't give me a far enough like push for it. But I can say this, the reason I wanted to do that testing was just to see how the blocker felt when stopping pucks and everything. And it feels honestly like the best balanced blocker I've ever used. And that's really impressive. I love Bauer blockers. The comfort and stuff is just phenomenal. But this thing just felt amazing to use in the hands and felt so good. I'm going to say that this feels like a really simple design and a kind of a simple blocker, but that's not a bad thing. They do everything right, and everything is simplified to the right things and doing the right things. Now, I talked to Just Hockey about this and was curious why they kept doing this. The index finger is connected with this two pieces of elastic right here on just the inside and at the front of the inside. Now, the weird part about this is when you close it, you can see how your fingers rotate, right? Everything else is connected and it works well on all other fingers, but for this one, it rotates. Now I was like, okay, that makes no sense. Why would they do that? No, every other company figured that out. That's a poor design. It's gonna wear out this part. Until I really grabbed a stick and took a look at it, because when you're holding a stick, your fingers are generally like this anyways if it's across the paddle, which is the way I do. I use this type of grip. Now I don't have the notch in there, so if you use a notch, this might not be the best idea. But when you have this and you hold a stick like this, it ends up just being perfectly flat, just like that on the paddle, and works perfectly. So I really can't complain about this at all because it works well, specifically in my usage. Again, if you have that little notch right here and like to kind of have your finger actually curled, this might be an issue. But for me and this testing, it works wonderful and does a really good job. Fingertip protection is something where they could probably improve a bit on. You can see how open my fingers are here. CCM, when Lefevre was designing their blockers, was one of the last companies to really put this in there. And as you can see, it's slightly sloped, but not a ton. And if you look at CCM's, it's slightly more than what this one is. This one's really flat, especially that index finger, where that index finger is definitely sloped like that. So this is definitely an area that could be improved. I know a ton of pros rip this stuff out. I'm a huge fingertip protection advocate because I have got either sticks jabbed there or against a post jam there, where this really comes in handy on other gloves. So I really think they could do something better here. I think Bauer does a really good job on this, but Brian's has too. It's segmented design, so it curls but never gets in the way. I really think there could be something better here, so it's a bit disappointing. With that said, they do have a nice padded foam on the backhand of the fingers as well. Obviously, that's not directly for fingertip protection, and that's for just impacts like this, but it is a nice padding there, and so they do a good job there. No fancy foams like CCM does, but It's not totally needed. This is a solid design and works really well. Index finger protection on this is honestly one of the best in the industries. Obviously the sideboard doesn't really cover that well, but this little index finger piece is phenomenal. You can see how it's curved, basically perfectly for a stick, as well as the piece underneath here. They don't have padding on this little gusset like CCM does. CCM puts D3O there, but they have this piece right here, and this piece work really well to seal that right there. On top of that, when you're actually wearing this, it will seal even better. But when I'm doing it like this, it's kind of coming off a little bit more. But when I was actually like standing there like this seals really well. So that's a really solid design and really good index finger protection there. I think it's a much better usage and design than what this was. This was kind of like, feels like the OG design, and this was them really fixing that and really making that work really well. Now, I'm not really sure what else I can say about this blocker. I think me saying I would pick this over a Bauer blocker speaks volumes and is basically enough. With that said, I am so impressed with this and how just solid it is all around. And I honestly don't think you can really get an idea of how good this gear is until you use it. I was impressed with it last time I saw the 20.1 set at Just Hockey, until I really got to take this home, put it on, take some shots with it on the puck machine. This thing just feels so good, and the whole set just kind of comes together. And this is a great piece of gear, really solid blocker, and I think True does a phenomenal job on this. This gear is awesome. This gear is unreal. You're legitimately getting pro level gear on this, and that's honestly not the case with stuff like this. It's just a next level. Again, no fancy crazy materials here. They don't really need it, and I can see why this is the leading company in the NHL for goalies like wearing this gear. I totally get it. It's phenomenal. The craftsmanship's there, the quality's there. It's really good. Now, hopefully this video was helpful and it was interesting. If it was helpful, please reach out to the companies like True and True Goalie and let them know that my videos were helpful and helped you make a purchase. Yes, their wait times are really long, but this gear is awesome. And hopefully that is some growing pains that they're going through, and that will change in the near future, and quality will hopefully stay the same. Now, with that said, if this video was helpful, please think about checking out Just Hockey and making your next hockey purchase there. Greatly appreciated from me, and on their end, gives them a thank you for letting me take this gear and actually using it and doing content with it. I'm greatly appreciated. Without them, I would not have been able to cover this line at all. And I think there's a lot of important stuff I covered on this line. So hopefully it will be helpful to other people. Otherwise, if you want to support the channel, please check out the links in the description too. Patreon, Buy Me a Coffee, everything through there comes right back into the channel so I can be doing reviews and making more content. Thank you very much again for watching this video. Hopefully it was helpful. Check out all the other stuff of the True Gear. We're going to have a ton of videos on this, so take it easy.
You're watching HockeyReviews.ca.